Kesha, welcome and welcome back. I just walked by a mirror and realized I was too cute. So yeah, we were going to film today. This is going to be part 2 of the asking for what you want. In the last video we talked about how we should just think about what we want and ask for it. And I got so many comments on that, and people telling me different stories of where they didn't ask for what they wanted and didn't get it, or where they did ask for what they want and got it and it left them hollow, and just a lot of different things. So it got me thinking about this was a deeper topic than I had initially thought it to be, and there was enough material there that was ripe for exploration. So I kind of put it in the back of my mind, put it in the hopper, and let it percolate. And 2, 3 in the morning, I'd probably just gone to bed, gotten fairly comfortable, and then Spirit was like, "This is what you need to be talking about." And I'm like, "Really?" Because dude, it's 2, 3 in the morning, and I just got into bed and I just got comfortable, and the lights are out and the bed is warm, and really? But I'm practicing. When I hear the guidance, I actually follow it. So I was like, all right, I'll get up. But if I get up, I have to turn on the light. Can I please do this without getting up and turning on the light? And then I was like, well, because I have nightstands next to the bed. And I reached over and I'm like, I know I have a pen and some note cards in the nightstand. So at least I got that. But dude, do I really have to get up and turn on the light? And I was like, well, and I'm like, let me at least get the pen and the note cards. So I got those. And as I was rooting for the pen, I hit on a flashlight that I'd put there about a week before and forgotten about. So it was like, hey, talk about that manifesting muscle. It is still working, and it was there for me when I needed it. And so I pulled out the flashlight, had my note cards and my pen, and I started writing down this information that I got from Spirit. And so here it is, and I'm going to share it with you now. Yeah, so asking for what you want means that you have to be in your sense of power to do that. But the first step of being in power is recognizing that vulnerability is the foundation of power. And I know that sounds somewhat counter, but just like if you're trying to jump, right? You have to press down really hard on the earth or whatever substance you're standing on, and use that as resistance to move you up and forward through space, right? And so vulnerability is what lays that foundation, because it clears the deck of anything that's unstable beneath you. If you can be authentic and authentically vulnerable, then you are unafraid of perception, of failure, of what might be. And that is the first state of amassing power. So knowing that is like, that was the first thing. And so then the question became, okay, so how do you be authentic? How do you be vulnerable? And for me, I've forgotten this lesson because it's been a while since I started down this path. And it came through a series of events. And I'm sure as we continue these videos, y'all are going to get this whole story, but there was a time when the girl who always had money fucking didn't have money. And that first bit of vulnerability was that I needed to make a payment. I needed to probably pay my rent, because it would have been important. And I didn't have it, and I needed to call my mom, which sucked, not just because I was an adult and needed to call for help, but because my mom and I weren't talking at the time. And so you can't just call up somebody and ask for money, certainly not a parent and certainly not mine. And so I had to, sit with myself and be with that sense of failure, and realize, whatever I needed to go through in that moment, that I needed to be in that moment and just experience it. And, eventually I made the call and things are okay, and I'm here now. So we know that everything worked out. But it was that space of accepting where I was in that moment. And I could be nothing but vulnerable, because I was opening myself up for attack, right? For denigration, not just my own sense of failure, but whatever comment was going to come at me because I'm making this ask. I was going to have to accept, because it is okay for me to ask for what I need, but I also have to be willing to accept the answer that comes back at me in the way that it's delivered. And that was a moment of extreme, extreme vulnerability. And after that particular incident, I realized like there was obviously more that had to happen, because that was the beginning of this journey. And shortly thereafter, I came across an audiobook, the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And I'd always been someone who was interested in language communication, how we interact with each other. And so that made sense to me, be impeccable with your word. And so what does that mean? It means reaching for the highest and best. I mean, if you read the book, he will talk about what being impeccable with your word is. But I'm in this particular context of how we are impeccable with our word that leads to vulnerability, that leads to us experiencing greater power. I'm defining it as reaching for the best descriptor in that moment that defines the experience that you are having, right? So to be impeccable with your word, say for instance, you are trying to lose a few pounds, right? And someone asks you, well, what did you eat today? Oh, well, I wasn't that good. I ate a plate of brownies. Well, being impeccable with your word would have you stop for a second and think, okay, is it really that I was being good or bad? Like, are we really no more than toddlers that can't just, don't have a higher values of discernment, that we can't reach for something beyond good or bad? So maybe not that I wasn't good or that I was bad because I ate a plate of brownies, but I was under a lot of stress and didn't stop to think before I realized I had eaten a plate of brownies. Do you see how if you say, oh, I wasn't, or I was bad, I ate a plate of brownies, versus I was having a really tough moment when I was struggling, and before I knew it, I had ate a plate of brownies. One of them gives you access to power and opportunity for change. If you're just good or bad at something, it's like, okay, so what, right? There's nothing really to work with. But if you are honest and recognize, oh, I was having a tough moment, and in my absent-mindedness of focusing on the food that was in front of me, still being affected by what had me upset, I ate a plate of brownies unconsciously, and how that is going to derail my efforts at losing a few pounds, then you now have something to work with. Because it means that, okay, so when I get emotional, or I'm upset, maybe it's not the best thing for me to go reach for food, right? I should be with that emotion. It gives you options. It gives you something to work from, right? That's what I mean by being impeccable with our word. Now, it doesn't mean that for every little thing you are going to rephrase it, but for every time that you do, one, it's a muscle that gets exercised, and so it becomes easier to do it more often with less thought, or with less effort, but for each time that you do it, it's a win, because you've given yourself options, you can choose differently, and you have greater control of your desired outcome. How we express our power is, there are lots of different ways. And so when we talk about being impeccable with our word, then obviously we're talking about our speech and our voice. And this is one that I spent a lot of time on, not recognizing it was necessarily related to this, but just because I wanted to feel myself greater. So one of the ways that we can use our voice to experience and express our power is to play with it, right? My favorite thing to do and to suggest is to sing. Sing full on a song that you love, not giving a care in the world about who might be listening. If you do care, do it in the shower. Do it in the car with the windows rolled up. I do it with the windows rolled down, but that's just me. But sing full on. Not worried about whether or not you're in tune or how good you sound. It really doesn't matter. What you're doing is you're putting air and love into these words and rhythms that you already love. And one of my favorite things, so I sing at this point, this has been years that I've been practicing this. So I sing all the time, especially when I'm at home by myself. and it's oftentimes random. And if I'm feeling a little bit low, or I know I have to like get myself ready for something that's big, I will pick one of my favorite like power ballads and just belt it out. My favorite right now, when I say right now, it's probably been the last couple of years because it's always right there for me, is War Pigs by Black Sabbath and the remake from Faith No More. There is something about that first line that just turns everything on. It's I'll just do it. Yeah. Generals gathered in their masses. Like, there's no way to do that and not feel power. Like, I can already feel all the atoms and energy in my head just resonating. And to know that I have access to that whenever I want it, it's like an inexhaustible supply of power. So pick a song, and just play with it. And don't be afraid of what your voice sounds like. It changes all the time anyway, so you might as well take it for a ride. It's yours. Another like way you hear the voice is use your natural voice. So often, man, oh man, oh man, if you ever, you talk to people on the phone, right? You talk to customer service, whatever, and they have that phone voice, and when you're calling customer service, for instance, and you get that phone voice, but you have a problem, and that whatever they tell you, it sounds like they're completely incompetent, right? And it's because there's no authenticity in your voice. Like when they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you," like they don't care, right? And the reason that they don't care is because you don't hear it in their voice. It's not because of the words they use. Or how often are we not likely to take someone seriously, especially a woman, if she uses a very girly and nasally voice? And I'm going to try to imitate it, but it's going to be hard. Like that voice, like, I don't have much time for it because to me, in my ears already at this point, it's pretty annoying. But a lot of that is born out of, well, if I use a cutesy girly voice, then people will like me better because, well, I'm cutesy and girly. But when you've mastered being vulnerable and you just don't damn care what other people think of you, it makes it a little bit easier to sink into your natural voice and use that as your mode of expression as opposed to trying to screech out in this higher register. So that's something to be aware of as well. And if that's something to practice. It's going to throw people off guard. It's going to throw you off guard in the beginning because you're just not used to speaking from that space. But it's one of I can't encourage it enough, truly. This was years ago, hanging out with some of my friends, and one of them brought a girl along, and she was obviously putting on an act in her voice and like when somebody asked her, a question, and it was also very, very cute. And it was so cute to the point that it was just so annoying. And, we all want to be respectful because that's dude's girl, but at the same time, like, get her away from me. Like, what is she doing here? She's not one of us. But okay, we make the allowance. We have our evening, whatever. And then I saw her a couple months later at a concert, and I said hello because, she's dude's girl and I hadn't seen her in a while, so we're going to say hello. And she came out with a hello that was her real voice. And I was like, oh, and I couldn't, and maybe I should have, but I didn't. I was like, oh my God, you found your voice. And I gave her the biggest hug, and we both she almost started to cry because it was such a recognition of her growth as a person. Like, you have to grow as a person to go from, putting on an act 24/7 to not. And it was just such a realization of how powerful the voice is and what a difference it can make in terms of how people respond to you. And from that moment on, she was one of the boys, right? Like, she could be one of us at that point because she had stepped into her power, whereas the rest of us had already kind of been there. Another way to be able to express from the fullest is to use your body. We just don't move enough. And we get into rote movement, right? But that's not the same thing as again, putting on your favorite music and dancing full out, like dance like it does not matter. I think that's one of the things, one of the many things I love about a really good concert, where if you are enjoying all the music and you're letting it move through your body and letting it move your body, it is such a release, and you come out and you're like, whew, God, that felt so good, right? So get jiggy with it. Just do it. Like, nobody cares. And again, if you're practicing vulnerability, it doesn't matter if anybody else is around. Encourage them to be your partner, right? Like, we want to enjoy this thing together, and that creates a moment that you get to have as a memory. So do that. Another one is with your body and movement, be deliberate in your stride when you walk. If you ever go for a walk, like oftentimes you'll be like, if you're out for like, a physical activity walk, right? It's very linear and you're kind of like huffing and moving, right? But if you were just to take a step back, take a deep breath, and then like make each stride, like you feel the fullness of each stride, there is no way you can perfect that action without it just changing your biochemical makeup and making you feel incredibly big and powerful. And speaking of things that make you big and powerful in terms of movement, if you all want a video on different power poses, let me know, because I've got a few that I go to, and but it would make this video entirely too long as it is. I have a few more things to share with you. But yeah, be deliberate in your walk. Take a full stride. It will completely change how you feel in your body. And dude, if you are like, so if you're going into a meeting or you're going to meet people, you're not on as soon as you're not on as soon as you see them. You're on as soon as anyone can see you. So from the moment you get out of your car, consider yourself on, right? The way that people respond to you when they see that you walk like that, or if you are walking like that 2-3 steps, boom, you open the door, you can't help but walk into that room with your full power about you. That will cause it, as much as it causes a stirring of the atoms within you, it causes a stirring of the atoms in the room and of the people that you are encountering, and they will respond to you differently. They will respond to you like, who is that, right? I want to know who that is. And people talk about having star power. Something I get complimented on regularly is, oh, I thought you were somebody. And I'm like, well, I am. But no, what they're saying is like, I come in with presence, and, if you practice a full stride, you can't help but have presence. So that's something I certainly encourage. This one is for so maybe my adult kids in the room. We need to go ahead and just close your ears for a minute, because this is going to be a grown folks observation. Say you were in the middle of the throes of passion with your partner, and you feel the urge to say or potentially do something. I don't know who you are, what you do. Say it. Do it. Like, don't stop and think, oh, I wonder if they're going to think I'm such. Again, you can't, if you're worried about what somebody's going to think or what the repercussion is going to be. I mean, all these things have consequences, but these are all positive ones. So I'm going to go with that. Do that. Say that. I've heard tell that it's liberating, and we'll just leave it there. Another, my adult kids can come back now. Another one to practice power in your being is looking at people directly in the eye when you talk to them. I don't know, especially now that we've been under quarantine for quite some time. Our interactions are, well, they're certainly, less, but we're also kind of forgetting some, like, how to move in the world socially. So this is a great way to a great time to practice, because everybody's coming back to it, with this new space and this new way. But practice looking at people directly in the eye. Not like you're staring at them and you're going to be creepy, but, if they're talking to you, trust that the words coming from their mouth will reach your ears, so you don't have to stare at their mouth to get it. Look them in the eye to see the greater meaning of their understanding, to see the greater meaning, right? That's certainly a very powerful thing to do. Like, not everybody can look somebody else in the eye, and you might find that people will wilt under your gaze, but you're not trying to stare them down. You're trying to engage with them. So yeah, try that. If it feels really, really, really awkward, and you would be one of those people who would shy away from an intense gaze, then for you, I would recommend something called mirror work. And I'm going to say for now, like mirror work, just go look that up. If you all want a video on mirror work, I will come back and talk about that. Because I'm trying for this not to be entirely too long. And now we come back to the whole nexus, and the reason for the video was, asking for what we want. And this is one thing that Spirit had me write down specifically. We ask for what we want at the level of our sense of self-worth. And for fear of rejection, we're often afraid to negotiate if we bring up the subject at all. And when we do, we tend to ask small. And that goes back to some of the comments that I heard where, for instance, one of my friend's brothers, he got up the Moxie and asked for a raise, and he had his points, laid out, and he was ready to prove like, hey, this is what I think I'm worth, and this is what I want you to pay me, and this is what I'm looking for. And he went and did it, and dude was like, yeah, you're right, done. And so for that second, he walked away, yeah. And then he was like, well, wait a minute. If he gave it up that easily, then I didn't ask for enough. And that is likely the truth. Because if you don't consistently ask for what you want and for what you think you are worth, then at some point you will be receiving beneath what other people's value of you is perceived to be. So obviously in that scenario and similar ones like it, the employer recognizes his worth and value of the employee and knows that he's worth this much more and could be paying more. And so in that particular instance that the employee asked for it, he was given it immediately. But so often, because we're afraid to ask, we think if we ask small, then that will be acceptable. And, we're not here for just acceptable. I mean, who of us is looking to settle? That is just not the business. That is not the point. And so continually ask for what you want. Continually lift up your sense of self-worth so that when you're asking at that new level, people are going to meet you at it. And when they don't, it's okay because, well, then not at your level of worth. And that's okay. The last thing that I want to leave you with, and I really hadn't intended on this being some 20 minutes, power that's not expressing is potential. But we are not here to amass our potential. We are here to share it. And so with that, I say take it out in the world. Be powerful, be big. I can't wait to hear what comes of it. So leave me comments. This is exciting. We'll see ya.